I'm meeting with Rob Aubrey today, a real estate broker, and he's going to talk to us specifically about some of the pitfalls people fall prey to in divorce specifically. So if you were hoping to tune in to learn about some hot tips about how to sell your house, you might get some of those. But this is about the situations that arise in divorce when people are a little more desperate or a little more concerned, and how best to handle those. So Rob, what brokerage are you with?
First I want to say thanks for having me, Eric, and I'm the owner and principal broker of Aubrey And Associates Realty. I've been in the industry since 1992. This is my 22nd year. Sold a couple houses, I've helped a couple families. And what I'd like to say, I guess the number one thing you need to start off with is moving and selling a house under good circumstances is brutal. Okay, now let's add the whole element of, a divorce. Okay, and that just changes everything because one, it changes the motivation. Typically, if two spouses own a property, trying to get them to agree, they have to agree on everything when we sell a house. Well, obviously they don't agree on anything. That's why we're selling a house at this point, right? So that in itself just adds challenges. It's really hard because a divorce just brings so many emotions to the table, and and that just clouds everything. So, again, under great circumstances, it's a brutal process. So it's kind of hard to say, here's the easy way to do it in a divorce. I mean,
Exactly.
I don't know
So
if that's...
rather than talking about making it easy, which is not really very
It's not gonna happen.
realistic, what are some of the things when you can stand back from it as the person who may be helping to broker the deal, but not the owner, you can see things more clearly.
Right.
You're not as emotionally attached to it. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people, whether it be the couple or just one or the other spouses who has some particular feelings about the house, either like get rid of it at all costs,
Right.
or hold on to it at all costs? What are some of the problems you see divorced people or divorcing people encounter, and how should they handle it better?
Right. Well, you've nailed it. I mean, a lot of times you have one that wants to get rid of it at all costs, and the other one doesn't.
Okay, so first of all, we've got a dispute. It's
Right.
irreconcilable. We can't do both.
Right. You're either selling it or you're not. So you need to come to terms with what you want to do.
What about for people that want to sell? They think it's a liability. Let's just get rid of it. If I'm going to be unmarried, I don't want to have this dogging me in my newly single life. Are there some things that people can do short of selling it so that their spouse can keep it without having to just be a my way or the highway?
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on a couple things. How is the ownership? How is the title of the property?
So let's assume, and not everybody, this is a good point Rob brings up, is you may consider the house to be marital property, and it very well might be, but still only titled in one spouse's name. It could be that it's titled in both names, but the loan is only in the name of one spouse or the other because of credit worthiness or something like that. So for this hypothetical, unless I say otherwise, let's assume that both spouses are on the loan and both spouses are on the title.
Okay, and then so then the question is, are both parties agreeing to sell it? If they are, so let's just kind of go down that road, right?
Yeah,
Because
look
unless they both agree, neither one's going to happen.
Okay.
Right. So let's say they both agree to sell. Because obviously the relationship has a lot of dysfunction, if you will. Let's just call it that. And they don't always agree on a lot of things. So one of the biggest mistakes I see divorcing couples make is, one of them, if they hire a friend, typically that friend is going to have more of a relationship with one party over the other. Boy, and that's a recipe for a disaster, because one party always feels that the representation isn't equal, because it's a challenge. Like in your world, when you represent one party over the other,
Yeah.
you represent one party.
Yeah.
The real estate broker, if it's a divorcing couple, both parties are still my client, and I need my fiduciary is given to both parties, which is a challenge. So I believe if one party's a friend of one of the parties, or if the broker or the agent is a friend of one of the parties, it's very, very challenging to offer an unbiased fiduciary to both parties. at
Which
the
is
same
kind
time.
of funny, because if you're selling the house, it would be kind of hard to benefit one spouse over the other in selling it if if both spouses simply want to get the highest price and,
Right.
at the soonest possible time.
If they both agree.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times and I tell you, and that's where it comes in. There's a lot of backstories that go on.
Sure, and there might be somebody saying, "Well, I'd be happy to lose a few $1,000 to sell it that much faster, or I'd be happy to stay a lot longer and pay the mortgage if it meant that we're going to cash out big."
Right.
I get that. What about some of the other options besides selling? Sometimes people think the only way to get out from under this liability is to sell it.
Right.
I don't want to be liable on this loan anymore. My spouse has run this house into the ground and made it really kind of an ugly, uncomfortable place. It's a money pit to me. What are some other options besides just selling it?
Well, you either sell it or keep it. Let's get it down to that basic first.
But I think you're falling victim to something that, what if I think the only way for me to be happy is for the house to be sold to a third party?
Right. Well, if one spouse wants to keep the property, then you have to look at it. So we're working on the assumption that both parties are owner of record.
Yes.
And both parties are on the loan.
Yes.
Okay. So giving title from one party to the other is easy. That's literally as simple as a 1-2-page document.
Right.
Sign it at a title company, notarize and record.
Rob, you and I are married. We're not really married,
No,
folks.
yes.
But in this hypothetical, any interest I have in the house, I'm signing it over to you.
Right.
Now you own the house, free and clear of any claim by me.
Correct.
We could do that literally in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, literally. Record it, notarize and record it, and you're done.
Okay.
However,
And you are now solely responsible for the loan. There you go. I'm no longer on the loan, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So what's the problem
Tell
with
that
the loan?
to the bank.
All right. So tell us what the problem with the loan
So the
is.
bank, if you owe money and you both owe the loan, why would a bank release one of their parties that could possibly be a payment? Right. The bank's number one goal in life is to collect the money.
Why go from 2 people we can collect from
To one.
down to 1?
That's not going to happen. So one party would have to get a loan and pay off the existing loan. Which in essentially is taking one party off the loan.
What you're really doing is selling the house to your spouse.
Yeah, that's pretty much
And the
it.
bank is then refinancing your purchase of a new house,
Right.
being the same house you're in, but now you're the only person on the loan.
Right, and so one party would have to qualify over the other. Most cases they don't. That's where you really run into your biggest issue. Most cases they don't, unless the remaining spouse is, typically they don't own their own income because they were usually a 2-income family and both incomes required to purchase the
To get
home.
the house.
You
So
know.
you're either going to be getting out of that house and into an apartment
Two
or a
smaller ones,
condo
right?
or a smaller house. Let me ask you this too. Some people get in a situation where it's not just a matter of selling it, but it's a matter of short selling.
Right.
Let's move on and talk a little bit about that. I got to be honest. I know the general definition of a short sale, but for those people that don't, let's talk a little bit about what a short sale is,
Okay.
why it can be so seductive, and what risks you're taking and what the downsides are. The benefits and the downsides.
Well, first of all, let's get clear on what a short sale isn't. It's not short. It's not short. They take a long time.
Okay. Why is
So-
it called a short sale?
Well, because, and that's what I was going to get to.
Yeah.
Short means the proceeds of the sale are not enough to pay off the existing loans or debts or encumbrances. So the money that's showing up at the table is short.
Yeah, you're short the ability to pay off the
Right.
loan.
So that's it. So it has nothing to do with time. And if you owe more than it's worth, then you have 2 options: either pay and stay, or short sale. That's it. If you have assets, then outside of a retirement fund, the bank's going to want it. You can't just say, "Well, I got 50 grand in a bank, and we're going to sell the house 30 grand short."
Right.
Banks are going to be, they want their money, because if you have it, they should get it, and they're entitled to it. You've agreed to pay. So if there are no assets to pay, if all the total assets can't pay off the debt, then it's a short sale. at that point, if neither one can afford it, then it's probably your best option. I don't, and a lot of times short sales can be delayed by, not showing up with paperwork timely, and then allows one party to stay into the property. If one party's staying there, they can sometimes get a free ride. And the truth is, in that scenario, that may seem fun or the right idea at the time. I don't know if fun's the right word, but what I've
Well,
learned.
it seems almost too good to be true. Great.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
no longer
rent-free.
liable on the house, and we didn't have to pay it off. We actually got away with paying less than we would have if we'd have stayed.
Right. Now I can live here rent free. And that seems okay, but the best advice I ever give people in that type of scenario is, look, the sooner you finish this, the sooner you can move on with your life.
Let me ask you another question that some people just don't think about. If it's a short sale and you're $30,000 short of paying off the loan, who's responsible for that? You didn't have to pay it, but
Right.
what happened? What does the bank do?
Yeah, the bank, they can put a judgment against you, a personal judgment. There was some laws, the Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Act that expired. If I'm not mistaken, that expired.
At least at the time that we recorded this.
Right. Yeah, and what that really meant was you weren't, and really all that was is you didn't owe the income tax. Because the way it works is if the bank closes and they say paid in full, so on their books, they've received the money. So because they didn't receive the money, they had to issue you a 1099.
That's right. In other words, they loaned you $200,000, but it got sold for $170,000.
Right. So
They gave you $30,000.
Right. If
That's
not, they have to take it as an
right.
income.
That's income to you, so you're going to get a 1099 and pay
Right.
taxes. So yes, you got your house short sold, but you're going to have a giant tax bill.
Correct. Now there are ways around that. If you can, and this is where real estate 101. See an accountant. I am not a tax advisor. However, after 22 years, I've kind of overheard a couple of accountants before and done my own reading. But there's ways that if you can prove your insolvency at the time of the sale, then you can be off the hook for the tax.
So short sales aren't short when it comes to time.
No.
And be prepared to talk to a real estate agent, a broker, an accountant, a
Right.
lawyer, and you might have to spend a little cash, but at least you're going to have your eyes open
Right.
and know if this is the right thing for you to do.
Right.
There's just no easy, just sign here and we're
Yeah,
done.
No,
Okay.
banks don't, you can say, banks are in the business to collect money.
Let's talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between a short sale and a foreclosure.
Right.
go ahead.
One item on that was, if you're so upside down and you've got judgments coming after you, you're all over the judgments on that. Bankruptcy is an option that the debt would be, there's no more debt, so there's no more tax. So you can kind of wipe it out with that. And again, you need to talk to an attorney. And as real estate brokers, we get involved in taxes and law and bankruptcy and, divorces, and, we get all these questions all the time. And we kind of have a working knowledge of it, but our advice is limited to the real estate transactions.
So in other words, it's okay to ask your real estate broker, your real estate agent, what he or she might know, and someone that's going to be someone you can trust then would be someone who's like, well, all right, off the cuff, I can tell you this is my general understanding.
Right.
However, you'll want to chat with an
Right.
accountant before you take anything I say as gospel.
Yeah, I call it cut wood. I wouldn't cut wood with my measurements, The
Right.
room looks like it's 10 feet, but if you're putting in a cabinet, get a tape measure.
That's
I'm not the
excellent.
tape measure.
I've never heard it that way before, but that's perfect.
Yeah, you don't cut wood with my measurements. So
All right.
you always seek, and again, I have a good working knowledge, and I will always disclose that, that I am a real
Right.
estate broker.
You know enough, though, to tell people about options to consider, even though you may not know everything about each option.
Right. I'm going to point you to the expert at that point.
So, we've talked about short sales, the pros and the cons. What are the pros and cons of foreclosure, and how are they similar to a short sale? How are they different?
Yeah, well, first of all, a short sale is, one of the main fundamental differences, you actually go to closing. The thing I like about a short sale over a foreclosure is, in a short sale, you kind of have some control of the navigation and the timing. You know, a foreclosure, it's going through process. There's a note on the door. You're moving.
Yeah.
You know, on
You've
their
gotta
time.
be out of here.
On their time. So I always advise the short sale because you have more control over time.
Does it look any better on a credit report?
No, the difference is there is no difference. I mean, they kind of lump them into
Not paying a loan is not paying a loan, whether you were
Well,
forced out. Or,
yes and no. I mean, but however, though, in a short sale, you know, if it can be negotiated, right, you can actually sometimes negotiate with a bank on how they report it.
Agreed, but let's
Paid
assume,
as agreed.
Yes, and I'm talking about that if it shows up as a short sale where
Right.
you were short, you're short whether it's
No, it's the same as a foreclosure.
right.
And it's the same as a deed in lieu of foreclosure. A lot of people get, you know, the banks will say, hey, give us the deed, you know, and people think they're off the hook. I gave them the house back. It's not a foreclosure.
It's a fair trade.
It's
That's
a-
what they think.
Yeah, a deed in lieu of foreclosure is the same as a foreclosure on your credit report.
The only difference being is that you didn't have to suffer the stigma of
No,
being
they
thrown
save,
out of your
they
house.
save money,
Yeah.
right?
And you save face.
Right.
Would that be correct?
Well, not really. I mean, yes and no. Yeah, you don't have the experience of the orange sticker on your door, and you know, and if you're not out by a certain time, you know, they'll come and and move your possessions out, and they do what's you know, if there's more than $1,000 on the property, they're not going to come and throw it out. They do. I forget. There's a word for it. It's kind of like a sale where you have the right to go buy it, you have the right to go get your property because they don't want your stuff.
Right.
Because your stuff is actually a liability to them because they have to hire somebody to get rid of it.
That's true.
So
Now, we didn't script this because that's one of the benefits of doing
No.
these interviews. But one thing that we have spoken before, and I wanted you to, for the benefit of people watching this, mention, because you said something funny when we met over lunch, and that was, which prompted me to have you come here and talk, and that was, for a divorcing a person, often you hear, but my house is special. Remember
Right.
that? So
And
tell
that-
me a little bit about how that comes about.
and first of all, that is not limited to divorcing
Divorced
couple.
people. Right.
I actually wrote an ebook, Home Seller's Guide, and chapter 1 is called "My Home is Special." Didn't you see that workbench? You know, and and there's tongue in cheek with that, and it goes on and it follows up the next paragraph that talks about why the workbench. You know, what is a work? I mean, the workbench has no value; it's a hunk of lumber. But a guy that built it with his child, you know, that has so much emotional
And
attachment.
let's back up a tad. So let's talk about how prices are set for houses in a neighborhood.
Well, there's three approaches, and before I go into the three approaches, let me tell you how they're not set.
Right.
They're not set by what you want. What you want is irrelevant.
Okay.
Okay. What you owe, it's irrelevant.
Yeah. If I don't want to pay $200,000 for a house that you owe $200,000 on, if I want to pay $150,000, you'll either take my $150,000 and take a loss, or I'll go to somebody else.
Right.
I don't have to pay what you owe on the house.
No,
Yeah.
I don't have to pay what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can't, market value is whatever a buyer and a seller agree to.
That's right.
Period. That's what market value means. So, there's no such thing as sold below market value because if they agreed, that's the market value.
So you don't get what you want, you don't get what you owe. And what was the third thing?
Let's see. So it's irrelevant what you want. It's irrelevant what you owe. Those are the two main ones.
Those are the two things. So then we get into the special. Hey, but my house has a circular driveway that I put in a few years ago, and nobody else does.
Right.
So Rob, considering that the house to my left and the house to my right were all built at the same time as my house,
Okay.
same basic floor plan, but I have put in a circular driveway, and I've got the receipt right here. And I paid $30,000 to that cement contractor. So, if the house to my left and right is worth $300,000, mine is worth $330,000, right?
Wrong.
But Rob,
Yeah, exactly.
my house is special.
So and that's what you hear all the time, and it has so basically that's the other one. What you paid, I guess, what you owe, right? What you paid is irrelevant. So if just because you have that, so in other words, if you let's say you have two houses for sale, and one of them has, and we'll use the cars. I mean, I always use the car analogy, right?
Okay.
You have two cars for sale. One car's for they're both for $20,000. But the one car A has has a navigation system, has all the, fancy Bluetooth for your phone.
Yeah.
It's got a great
Tinted
sound.
windows.
Yeah, it's got all the sport package, right? And they're both $20,000. The other one is just plain. Well, which one are you going to buy?
They're more or less the same car. Just
Same
one-
price, everything's the same,
Yeah.
just the one has the updated
I
features.
think I'd get the stuff with all the updated features and doodads on it.
Right, for the same
25
price.
Yeah, for the same price.
Why would you buy the other one,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, what if the other car without the doodads adjusted their price to 17,000?
Unless the doodads were important to me and all I wanted to do was get basic transportation, I'd save $3,000 and buy the cheaper car.
Correct. I mean it's that simple, right? So, in other words, you have to have more features and benefits for the same
I'll take your
price.
analogy once, and I'm a young person with no money who
Yeah,
just
right.
wants to buy a car.
The lower payment, right?
I'm going to buy the cheapest car that I can. I'm going to get the nicest cheap car
I can afford. Right.
Hey, maybe if I'm a young couple with a baby and I'm eager to get out of my apartment, I may want the palace,
Right.
but if I can afford that house without the tinted windows and the sport package,
Yeah.
but it keeps my family warm and dry,
Right.
I think I'm going to buy that one.
Right. Exactly. So it boils down to, if you're both the same price, you must have more features and benefits.
That's right.
So if that's it.
So the proverbial person who comes to my neighborhood and says, the house to your left, Mr. Johnson, is $300,000. The house to your right, Mr. Johnson, is $300,000, and your house is also $300,000. It's like, oh no, look at this circular driveway. I want $330,000. Somebody might say, I really like the circular driveway, but I don't have to have it,
Right.
and I'd rather get a house in this neighborhood near these schools,
Right.
or whatever, or with these tree-lined streets. And maybe I'll put in my own driveway someday. I'm saving $30,000 up front and buying the house to the left.
Right. The question I always ask that is, so let me ask you this, Eric. When you put in a circular driveway, did you put it in for yourself or for the next guy?
How could anyone not like it? Well, I guess so, Rob. Rob, no, I really like the idea of being able to, get out of my house
that's a
either
cool-
way. So I put it in for myself.
Right. Did you enjoy it?
I sure did.
Great.
Yeah. But I sure want to get that money out that I put in. I mean, it's not fair that I have to eat that expense. The buyer should pick that up too, because that's that. Have you seen how thick this concrete is? Rob?
Right.
Did you know that I've got heating elements under this thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And suppose they don't care.
How could they not care?
Because they don't. Doesn't matter.
It's not valuable to them.
Yeah, period.
Same kind of a thing. Some people might say, "Ooh, look, tinted windows." Somebody might say, "I don't care if people can see in through my windows."
Right.
Well, I paid $800 for this tinting. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I just want your car. If it's a used car, I just want your car.
Right.
I just want to buy this particular car. I don't want to buy the tinted windows. I'll take them if I must. Same
Right.
kind of a situation.
And different things float, different boats. I mean,
You mentioned another thing too, when people will say, "Hey, upgraded carpet, a new roof,
right.
recent updated wiring." That
Right.
ought to drive the price up, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, a new roof. I mean, a new roof just means it doesn't leak anymore, right? Is that? I mean,
That was the thing I wanted you to point out, is that folks, people when they're buying a house, when I buy a house, if I buy a new house and someone says, "Hey, the roof is new," I might say, "Good, so it doesn't leak?" Yes. "Oh, look, there's new carpet." Good, so there aren't stains and crap all over it?
right.
I'm
Yeah.
not particularly impressed with new carpet because I expect the good carpet to be good already.
And clean, right? So here's what happens, and here's how it plays out emotionally. If you've ever painted a room, if you ever had a house and they had old carpet, I mean, it was clean, but it was just old and dated, worn, but still, and then the walls were just a funky color, and you went out and you got new carpet and you painted the room and you got new light fixtures. Man, the room just looked, the difference was just mind-boggling, because you remember the shag rug and the
Orange paint.
yeah, and the felt wallpaper, right? But the other buyer didn't see. So the buyer walks in and goes, "Well, it's got carpet and neutral colors.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be that way."
This is a nice looking house.
Right. So typically what happens, what I call, two things. So when a seller adds, paint, let's say that's a +5. They add carpet, that's a +5. They add a roof, that's a +10. But the problem is, if they needed those, then they started out with a -5, a -5, and a -10. So they started out with a
That's
-20.
right.
And then when they added the +5, the +5, and the +10, they really brought it up to 0.
Okay.
Now there may be some value to it, but it's not a plus. It's not going to be a positive 20. It's just going to get you near the 0 line.
All right, a couple of more, or I should say, a little more pointed questions. Real estate agents don't really care what this sells for, because as long as we sell it at a profit, they're going to do just fine. I have a feeling my real estate agent is trying to undercut the price on this for a quick turnaround. How serious a concern should that be?
You know, two things. One is you can overprice a property and sit and languish. I mean, if you're not getting activity and action inside of, a couple weeks or 30 days, then you're simply overpriced. Now the other side of that is it's virtually impossible to underprice it, because if it's seriously underpriced, you'll get many offers on the first day, and it'll actually drive the price back up to natural value.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because if it's, if everything's 300,000,
So it could be a savvy sales technique.
yeah, it actually is. There's a book. It was a book. How to Sell Your Home in 7 Days or something like that. And the idea and the whole concept there was to offer it, to take it out to market at a pretty aggressive price. Not 100,000 for 300,000, but
Sure.
$300,000 house, you're at 250. And what they would do is they would have, and the concept of the book was, you had 2 appraisals sitting there. You had 2 inspection reports from 2 different independent inspections, and you had to come in, and everybody got a week to look at the house, and then you had a week to make your highest and best offer. So because it was
You started a bidding war.
right, and you removed their conditions, right? We know it's worth X. Here's the inspections, and I always recommend it, get an inspection and repair the things that aren't going to go away, right? I mean,
Sure.
if there's issues with electrical, there may be safety issue, and it's a few $100s. Let's not wait for the buyer's inspector to point it out and start a negotiation and making people nervous. Let's just correct them. So, but anyway, so back to the bidding war, it'll actually drive the price up to natural market.
Natural market, that's cool.
All
All right, another concern, especially for somebody where money is tight, quite frequently in a divorce situation. I'm just gonna for sale by owner it.
Sure.
And I'm gonna save that commission, because that money will be money in my pocket going
Absolutely.
forward. So tell me why I shouldn't do that. Now,
Well,
again,
I mean, first of all, I'm never going to say you shouldn't. I mean,
And that's why I have Rob here, because see, you're gonna get some information. He's not going to just give you a sales pitch.
no.
so
I mean, you can sell your home. There's no rule or no law against that. I guess the biggest issue is people, what they don't understand is that all their decisions they're going to make about selling their home, even under good circumstances, are going to be emotion based. Now, they will justify their decision logically. However, it's their own brain justifying their emotional decision
after the fact.
after the emotional decision was being made. Now let's dogpile on a rabbit, if you will, all the emotions that come with a divorce. It's at that point, I just think, sometimes I see sellers get hung up over, they're negotiating over $1,000, and they're kind of stuck. And as somebody that's unattached, I look at this and go, look, what you guys are talking about is $1,000. Okay, one more payment and that money's gone.
Good point.
So, and if you're dividing up $1,000 between 2 people, so now you're to the point of $500 a piece is preventing you from getting on with your life.
Yeah, you could have a tire blowout on the freeway, and any
Yeah.
savings is gone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm closing on a house next week where, the hot water heater went out, right? While it was on the market, another 30 days and it would have been the buyer's problem, right? But it turns out it's the seller's problem, it's $800. I mean, we did a little more work. It was a double hot water and we put in, but anyway, it was $800, so, the thing is, you just don't know. So it's kind of like, and where a good broker comes in and a good agent is, they're going to help you really get through the process.
That water heater is a good example too, because if I'm buying the house from you and we're ready to close, and then suddenly I find out the water heater goes out, if you came to me and said, all right, well, we're going to have to increase the price $800, I'd go, No.
No.
I'm buying a house with a working water heater.
Right.
Now, reasonable minds could differ, but I think what you're telling me is that if I said, tell you what, I'm paying this price for that house and it will have a working water heater, or I walk, you're going to advise your sellers, like, shell out the $800
Yeah.
and put in this thing and get this done.
Right.
Because you don't know who might be around the corner next.
No. Well, and again, one more house payment and that money's gone.
And the money's gone.
I mean, so what you don't want to do is wait another 60 days and then put out the 800 anyway.
And then do it anyway.
Yeah, so just,
Yeah,
that's
you're going to have to do that whether that guy
it's
buys it
coming
or
or
somebody
not, right?
else.
So I have an expression what I call buyer math and seller math. Let me talk about buyer math and seller math. So the way a seller views the math is this: if I have a house that's worth $300,000 and it needs if I have a house that needs $20,000 in upgrades to make it worth 300, right? Because my house hasn't been upgraded. All the homes in the area that are selling at 300 are upgraded, and I need 20 grand to get it there. Well, the seller says, well, then my house is worth 280. However, here's the way a buyer views that, right? Because that's basic math. I mean, that's pure math.
That's pure math.
Buyer says, well, if I have to spend 280 and then come up with another 20,000 after closing, then I might as well just buy one that's already done, because I don't need the 20,000. I only
Right.
need 20%,
Right.
or
And
5% of the
And
20,000.
I move in immediately, and I don't have to worry about sweat
Right,
equity.
no
and-
contractors, all that kind of stuff. So if the house needs 20,000 after closing, which is a lot of cash to come up with after closing, then the house is only worth 260 to me.
Yep.
Because
Another good point.
yeah, that's what I call buyer math and seller math. Because I'm not gonna, I just assume, because the buyer, remember, the buyer doesn't have to come up with the 20,000 on a house that's already redone. They only have to come up with their down payment, an additional down payment of 20,000.
In a divorce setting, is a house an asset or a liability more often than not?
Well, I'm a big Robert Kiyosaki fan. He wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, and basically he says, unless the house generates positive cash flow, it's a liability, right? We view a house as an asset, and it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't buy a house because it's not an asset. In a divorce, if there's equity, then it's an asset. You need to get rid of it. I think, but that's a tough question, because it really boils down to what the agreement is. I mean, if you agree to sell it and there's equity, well, now it's an asset. If you can't come to terms, or if you're unable to sell it, now it's a pure liability. Pure liability. I mean, you have taxes, insurance, maintenance and payments, and just, and then
Even after you sell it, there might be a deficiency, and you're going to have
Yeah.
to divide that between you and your spouse.
right, or decide how that's going to be
So
divided.
it's going to be done.
And between you and I think, if you're going through the divorce, I think sticking around in the property where you have all these memories and emotions, I personally don't think that's healthy. I think the thing you can do most for your emotional health is to create a new life.
Yep.
Because you have a new life, whether you're coming
Whether
to
you
terms.
want, yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. It's just a question of how fast you get on with it. And I always think, and there's reasons to stay in one place. Sometimes with children involved, you want to maintain some type of stability.
Everybody's situation does have a unique aspect to it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you would say, generally speaking, just get out from under the house, get out from under that liability, that risk.
Right.
Move on with your life. It's not going to be easy necessarily,
No.
but you've made one less hassle for yourself.
Yeah, because you're getting on with your life, whether you want to or not. That's it's not a question of whether you want to. You are, and the sooner you come to terms and embrace that, the faster you'll get on with it.
All right. Rob, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
No,
Come back and see us
that's my
again
absolute
sometime.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.